Hey readers, my name is Mrs. Wingers and I am here to read you a book. Now, if there's one thing you know about me, it's that I read slow. And I love to read slow so that I can savor everything about it. The book we're going to read slowly today is called 100. Look at that cover. Look at how nice this is. And let me tell you why I chose this book. I had never heard of this story until about 24 hours ago when I was talking to our librarian at my school, Miss Weir, and I was asking her, the kind of books she likes to read, and she said 100. I said, 100? I've never ever heard of that. Tell me more. And she said, well, it's a picture book, but it's based in Saudi Arabia, and that's kind of nice because that's where we live. And I said, oh my goodness, I have to check it out. So I got it from the library, read it, love it, and decided to do a read aloud. So before we read, I need my tools. What are the tools we need to get started in reading? Do you know this by now? We need our book, of course, the thing we're going to read. Sticky notes, so we can take some notes and put it directly into the book. Our reading journal, I've got mine right here. And then something to write with. All right, let's get started. 100 by Hala bint Khalid. Once upon a not so long ago, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia was very poor. Most of its people lived in tents and mud brick houses without any electricity or plumbing. Imagine! Water was very scarce, so the king ordered a countrywide search for underground water wells. The big machines drilled deep, deep into the earth, but what came up surprised everyone, especially the king. What they found under the ground was not fresh water, but mucky black oil. This black gold brought in lots of money, and the money changed everything. All of a sudden, children were able to do things their parents had never dreamed of, like watch television, eat ice cream, and go to school in cars. In the 1960s and 70s, it was as if the world was on fast forward. Soaring buildings popped out of the desert like mushrooms, and winding roads were carved into the rugged mountains. Within the blink of an eye, modernity swept through the land, but some things could never change. The love the Saudi people have for their tents and their wide-open deserts is one of them. This is a story inspired by those booming times. So that was an introduction, and a lot of times when we read stories, the first few pages will introduce us to the setting and kind of what the story is going to be about. So I'm going to make a quick note. In this introduction, it told us this story is set in the 1960s. Also, it's the story, it said about how people loved their tents and wide open deserts. The whole country was waiting for rain. All through the boiling summer they waited, and through most of the autumn they waited until finally the rains came. This meant that something very special was about to happen. The deserts would soon bloom into a rainbow of plants and flowers. The grand princess called for her wazir. "This is a fine time to take my grandchildren on a camping trip. Prepare the necessary." "How many should I prepare for, Your Highness?" asked the wazir. The princess began counting on her fingers. Now, I want to point out something that a nice technique that they used in this writing. And wazir is a word that maybe some of us don't know, and so they put a little note at the bottom. Let me show you this. So this author has the word wazir here. There's a little one, and the definition is down here, personal assistant. So now we know that this man is the personal assistant to the princess. If you listened to that the first time and it didn't quite make sense to you because you didn't know what wazir was, You might want to go back and listen to it. Now that you know that wazir means a personal assistant, it might make a little bit more sense. Well, I have my 10 daughters. And you can see here, one of the great things about this book is the illustrations. There's not so much text, but you can notice in the illustrations, each character has such differences. It's pretty cool. I'm going to make a note about that. When I'm making a note about something that I usually like to put a little heart on it. That's my code for showing this is just something I enjoy about this book. And on the next page it says, and my 10 grandsons, and each one has a name: Ahmad, Mansour, Saad, Sultan, Faisal, Abdullah, Khalid, Bandar, Yazid, and Fahad. Oh, more people. And we'll need the 10 nannies: Winifred, Zura, Anne, Lisa, Charlotte, Maggie, Olfat, Beatrice, Annette, and Rita. And something else you'll notice on this page, let me get close, is that each of these nannies, each lady, has the country that they come from next to it. So you can kind of see some traditional clothing in here. That's just another interesting thing that the illustrator did. My 10 binyat. Here we have another word that maybe some of us had never heard before. I know I've never heard this word before I read this book. And the author put another little note. Let me show you. So here it says my 10 binyat, and then down here it has the definition. It says that binyat means companions. So these are the princess's 10 companions. Let me show you the next page. The 10 sabat. That's 50, Your Highness, said the wazir. And you can see here, sabat means serving girls. And the princess says, hang on, I'm not finished yet, said the princess. Don't forget my 10 tabakat. And again, the authors told us what that means, which means kitchen girls. So here we see the 10 kitchen girls. There's also a running count under each person of the number. So we have 51, 52, 53. So this is also kind of like a math book if you enjoy those kind of crossover books that have some math in it. This is the book for you. The 10 safrajiya. I'm going to have to sound this one out. Suffragia. 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 That means serving men. Do you notice how when I get to a tricky word, something I've never seen before, I sound it out a few times to make sure it kind of sounds right before I move on? Let me try it again. The 10 suffragia. Suffragia, which means serving men. Plus the 10 farashin. Farashin. Plus the 10 farashin, which means the men who carry and install the furniture. Wow, that's a lot of people. Then we have the 10 gahwajia. Gahwajia. Then we have the 10 gawajia, which are the 10 coffee men. 10 coffee men. Wow. You're noticing I'm encountering a lot of words that I'm not familiar with, but I'm not giving up. And even though the first time I say it, it might not sound right, and it may sound like a mistake, I'm not going to give up until I keep practicing and it kind of sounds right. And finally, we have the 10 sanaiya, which means handyman. Sanaiya. You can see on this page, we learned that sanya means the handyman, but each one of these individual people has a different job. There's the snake catcher, the cook's son, the cook's helper, the cook, Majid, Abu Majid. Here's the driver, and Kawi, and an electrician. So, next it's 100 people, Your Highness? Asked the wazir. Yes, confirmed the princess calmly. It took the wazir a full week to organize everything and set up the tents. Then, on a Saturday, a big truck called the Tish Tish was prepared. All the supplies were lined up at the bottom of the Tish Tish. The bedding was piled up on top of the supplies, the carpets were rolled out on top of the bedding, and the men and the boys sat on the top of the carpets, just as if they were in a sitting room. After the dawn prayer, all the men trundled out to the campsite in preparation for the princess's arrival. At 10 o'clock that morning, all of the women and children, led by the princess, boarded a giant bus named the Antarnash. The Antarnash. Well stocked with all sorts of snacks and drinks, they headed for the campsite. They drove for quite a long time, and when they were finally nearing the campsite, the bus headed off the asphalt and into the sandy desert. Here, the inevitable happened. You see, this vehicle was not made to move across the sand, and so it got stuck. And watch this. This is what's so cool. I mean, there's so many things cool about this book, but this is really cool. So it got stuck. Now, in those days, there was no way to contact the men for help. No mobile phones. Remember, it's the 1960s. No mobile phones had not been invented yet, so the group had to take matters into their own hands. First, the 10 Sabat and the 10 Tabakat got off the bus. They started to push, but it wouldn't budge. So the 10 granddaughters, 10 grandsons, and 10 nannies got off to push. But the bus got stuck even more. And, oh, look at that. Finally, the Grand Princess herself came down with her 10 binyat, and everyone pushed and pushed. Some people were pushing the bus, and some people were pushing the people. At last, with a big grum, the bus surged out of the sand. Hooray! Look at how cool this picture is, this big trifold 3-page panel. Awesome. In the evening, they lit up the sky with a magnificent display of fireworks, while the Grand Princess and her binyat played drums and sang traditional songs. It was a lovely night. Now I want to show you something that's amazing. Just like on this last page, there is this big trifold. This page has a very special thing. It's a 4-page poster that folds out of the book. Very cool, right? When I come across things like this in my reading, see how it folds back in? I like to make a note so that if I ever want to remember, like if I'm doing my own writing and I think, how can I make my book really cool? I'll make a note to remind myself that this is a kind of technique to make my book really interesting. I'm going to write that. 3 days later, the entire group returned to town. But guess what happened to the Antarnash yet again? Dun, dun, dun. The end. But there are a few cool pages. If you ever get a chance to check this out from our library or another library, it has lots of information about like the drawings, the people who are in the story, and more details. This is just such a neat book. I'm so glad Miss Weir recommended it. So when we finish a story, it's important that we go back through, take out our sticky notes, and write long in our reader's notebook. I'm going to do that now. So I have my page here with the title and the author all ready to go. And I'll move over my sticky notes. I always start at the beginning. And it reminds me of the things I liked and the thoughts I had while I was reading. I think think I had this. I love the fold-out page. That was my last sticky note. Now let me write some thoughts. First, I'll say, I'm so glad Miss Weir recommended this book. And to be honest, I always spell recommended wrong. This is like I've been doing it my whole life. So I'm going to try my best and circle that word. I'm so glad Miss Weir recommended. So my writing, all I'm thinking is, I'm so glad Miss Weir recommended this book. It was a cute and fun story. The best part was the different pictures and the page fold-outs. It made the book very unique. And the last thing I'm going to do is flip to my book list, write the date, and the title, author, and my rating. I think I'll give it a 3 out of 5. I really liked the techniques that the illustrator and the author used to make the story interesting, but overall the story wasn't amazing. So I'm going to put 3 out of 5. Well, there you have it, another slow read of a really great book. One of the best ways to find good books is hearing recommendations from your friends. I never would have found this book if Miss Weir hadn't have told me about it, which makes me think, it reminds me that if I ever read a good book, I should tell my friends, because then they can have the same enjoyable reading experience that I had. So if you have any books that you love and you'd like me to read on my channel, let me know. Send me a message, leave a comment, and keep reading, keep having fun. I'll see you all soon. Bye.